this episode of Vartalap. Pleasure to have you here. How are you doing?
All well, thank you.
So, for our listeners, Harsha Kakkar sir was commissioned into Regiment of Artillery in June 1979, and he superannuated in March 2015 as a Major General. During his military service, he held a variety of appointments in every part of the country, including Jammu and Kashmir and Northeast. He is also a founder member of a Lucknow-based think tank called Strive, Society for Transformative Research and Veteran Empowerment. He extensively writes for a few newspapers, magazine, and online newsletters. And he is also a security analyst on India Today, TV, Aaj Tak, Doordarshan UP, and other small channels. Anything that I missed, sir, you want to add to your profile?
Not at all. Please go ahead. Good enough.
Sir,
Thank you.
Sir, one of the things that I wanted to touch upon today was what's happening on the line of actual control with China. And I believe you have been following it too. From my perspective, and for many listeners, it would be very important to understand why the Chinese have chosen this timing when the world is affected with corona and people are suffering. Why did China choose this particular movement to create an imbroglio on line of actual control?
I would say whether it was the time chosen to do it or it was an opportunity. There is always a dispute between the two. Let me put it across and try and explain it. China comes forward every year at this time for exercises.
Right.
They did the same this year. We had inputs of them coming in for the exercise. But somewhere within the inputs, we took it to be that it's going to be an annual exercise. That is my perception. I may be wrong, but that's my perception. And therefore, we did not, like we do every year, bring in our troops for their exercise, which is a counterbalance to the Chinese forces.
Okay.
So I guess they noticed this gap in force level and tried to exploit this gap by pushing in people beyond what would have been their normal area.
Okay.
How do I justify this action? The initial clash which happened at Pangong So was a normal clash of sticks and stones, which also happened in Sikkim.
Okay.
Now, once they realized that they've got a little bit, they tried the same in Galwan, by which time they had firmed in their intentions.
Okay.
And that is when they used the unwarranted equipment, which was spike rods and things like that. Now, since they were not used in Pangong So, I presume that that was a testing point.
Okay.
Okay. So this could be one. Now, the other reason, which is what you've been stating, why during COVID, you notice it is not only here, it is also in the South and East China Sea. It is also pushing against Taiwan.
Right.
It's pushing against Japan.
Yeah.
Now, why all of a sudden has China gone all across? Reasons are many which are being listed. Some of it is that there is an internal pressure on Xi Jinping.
Okay.
The second is China is trying to offset the internal anger within China on the losses that they've had thanks to the corona virus and the anger of the local public. So by doing so, what they're actually doing is switching mindsets from here onto their offensive aspect, thereby building in nationalism and patriotism, and thereby letting people move away from the anger against the CCP.
Okay.
Another reason being touted by many people is that China, which was the first to suffer, was also the first to recover.
Yeah.
Recovery was fast because of the strong measures which only a communist government can take and no democratic government can follow.
Okay.
So they wanted to exploit the global pressure on COVID.
Okay.
With nations involved, especially when the US aircraft carrier Theodore Roosevelt went into hibernation on account of COVID. So they thought they could exploit the scenario. So there are two sides to it if you really analyze. One, did they exploit it along the LAC? Or two, did they actually go about it for this? It's very difficult to determine which of the two is actually correct. But
Sir,
I
but
would take a combination of both.
sir, would it be prudent to say that they were also looking to pressurize India, which actually got WHO's executive board chairmanship sometime in May or June? So was it
Uh,
some sort of pressure tactic there to put pressure on India so that Chinese are not castigated for spreading COVID?
you see, WHA, when you're heading, you will only monitor what the body says.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, if the mass body has said that there should be an investigation, China has agreed to a WHO-led investigation. The team is in China at the moment. You can only monitor it. You cannot do much other than that. Secondly, India, till the incident happened along the LAC, India was not taking any action to anger China.
Right.
Because for us, we were following a policy of deterrence, we were following a policy of avoidance.
Mm-hmm.
So we were not looking at getting into a conflict. So it's quite unlikely that this could be the reason, though the other reason being touted also by a lot of people is India's proximity to the US.
Right.
But realistically, we may have been closer to the US, but we were not taking any steps which would impact China.
Right. Sure. So one of the things that probably comes to my mind is this clash is happening, and we don't know what will be the actual outcome of it. The armies are still very close to each other on the
Uh,
LSE.
One thing I would slightly disagree on this point.
Mhm.
You are firm in what you want.
Right.
You're willing to wait till you get it. You've got
Yeah.
to realize that in none of the earlier standoffs that we had,
Mhm.
whether it was Rungdom-Chu in 80s in Arunachal, whether it was Depsang in 2013, whether it was Doklam in 2017,
17.
none of them
Yeah.
ended very early.
Mhm.
They all took time,
Right.
right? So even this is expected to be a long haul. How long it's going to take? Because you are determined that we will stick to what we want. Now, the only option for you, for China to push beyond, is to escalate beyond a level.
Mhm.
Okay. So, where are we going to? I mean, if your aim is clear, your standing is clear,
Mhm.
and you're willing for the escalation in case they decide to push. Otherwise, you're willing to be patient to get what you want.
Mhm.
So, expecting it to escalate is in their hands, which they also unlikely to do because of multiple factors. Nobody in the present global environment, especially where there are nuclear weapons, is willing to escalate beyond a point.
But one thing, sir, Xi Jinping has been emphasizing for many years now, exhorting the army to be ready and prepared for a small war. And if you remember 1962, the 1 month war was fought between October and November. So, is there something like a scenario building up towards that?
See, between 62 and now, there's a world of a change.
Right.
With the way the environment is, the nuclear environment, the global alignments, nobody is going to let you get away with anything. After all, once it escalates, there is no control on escalation.
Right.
Okay, there is no control of success.
Yeah.
All right. In 62, the soldier fought till the end.
Mhm.
Where you lacked was equipment, where you lacked was support, where you lacked was clothing.
Mhm.
Today, you're prepared in every aspect. He's also aware, considering the past record post 62, whether it's 67, whether it was the 80s, whether it has been Doklam or Depsang, he's very clear on what your standing is. The only thing that is there today, with the difference between all other things, is that he is bargaining from a position where he is in a slightly stronger position.
Okay.
But that stronger position doesn't give him any major benefits in terms of success, nor does it warranty success in any form. Okay, so to look at it from 62 and now, there's a world of a difference because everything has changed.
Mhm. Sir, one thing, so I'll come to 62, the lessons that we learned. But there is a story from 1967, and you know that very well, where we did defeat the Chinese at specific points. That story is not talked about much in Indian defense establishment, or is not even in memory of people. What do you feel are the reasons for something like that?
See, this was an incident which happened in Sikkim in limited areas
Yes.
where you held your ground, which was basically that is what the soldier even did in 62. In all places, whether it was Rezangla, whether it was Chushul, whether it was in multiple places in the northeast, the soldier held his ground and fought till the last man, last round. They were unwilling to back down. In 67, when you were better equipped, you gave a stronger answer.
Right.
62, you had no artillery support, you had nothing which could back you up. All right.
Yeah.
So things have changed post 62 because you modernized, you kept updating yourself slowly and steadily.
Yeah.
So that is, and since it was localized, it remained localized.
Right.
Okay, that's why the things have not gone beyond.
Okay.
So those are the changes that have happened. Now we've prepared our defenses over the years. We've been strengthening our defenses because we do not seek territory. We seek to ensure security of our territory.
Okay.
So you are prepared for that in every environment. No matter how much he wishes to escalate, ultimately he'll have to run over the defenses. And running over defenses when they are fully prepared is not an easy task.
So, apart from the defense preparedness that we have done from 62 onwards, how do you see has our foreign policy and political establishment become more versatile over those periods? Are we in a better position to counter the information warfare that comes from the Chinese as well through Global Times and their other puppet newspapers?
See, firstly, you got to realize that as you grow as a nation in economic power, you are able to provide funds for modernizing defense.
Right.
In a country like India, whatever you have as a kitty requires multiple usages, whether it's infrastructure development, social security,
Right.
social needs of the population. So you need funds for that, and you got to also simultaneously modernize defense.
Yeah.
Now, along with it, as you grow in economic power and you grow as a market with the largest growing middle class in the world, you get a power in the world on the world stage. Nations come to you. Today, there is no nation which is not interacting with India on the global stage. Prior to COVID, there was no world leader who did not come to India. There was almost no nation which the Indian Prime Minister did not visit. And everywhere that he went, he signed 2 or 3 agreements. One was economic, which is trade. One was military cooperation, and the rest. So these were the, so automatically you today have a standing.
Okay.
The West wants to interact with you because, and join with you in partnership because you're the only one who can contain China. You're the only one who can dominate South Asia and Southeast Asia, the main trade routes. You have the diplomatic power to pull in a lot of countries because of your economic backing and your assistance that you're providing to the countries. So diplomatically, if you look at it, and a simple way of proving it to you was a comment made in the Pak Senate, when one of their own leaders said, to win a seat in the UN Security Council on a rotational basis is nothing great. But to win a seat with 184 out of 192 votes is something which is excellent, which means that the world is standing with India. And even Pakistan's own allies are voting for India.
Right.
So which itself displays the amount of power that you have, which is your diplomatic power. You see, your nation has got diplomatic, military, and economic power, the 3 major elements, and of course is informational. So that is, out of the 4 powers, if you look at it, your diplomatic, economic, and military are well recognized globally. Okay, so therefore everyone is looking at you, whether it's Quad, whether it's US coordination, whether it's Europe. You look at the nations and they're looking up at you. Now let's come down to what you were talking about in terms of the information warfare.
Right.
Now, information warfare that is being propelled by China is what we are seeing. You're seeing it on social media because, and everyone knows that it's fake inputs that are coming in. No one has believed China historically, and no one will believe China historically. Now, especially with COVID, with fake inputs on COVID and fake numbers of deaths and hiding figures, not declaring their casualties in Galwan is a clear indicator that China has got actually nothing to share. Now, these fake inputs, there are two ways of dealing with it. One is you keep issuing a counter to everyone. Second is ignore it.
Right.
How many people are going to fall for fake Chinese inputs? They die a natural death.
True.
Today, if you look at it, China is after only two nations, US and India. They're not countering it, nor are we. So, in some extent, when do you counter? You counter it when a statement which has been made directly is wrong. Like the statement made by the Chinese ambassador to India when he spoke of the pullout, the Indian embassy, the Indian Foreign Office immediately issued a statement challenging him. Now, for an ambassador to be told you're wrong by your host country indicates what your standing is. All right. So, where required you counter? Now, for us, if we are running the same game on Chinese WeChat, if you're doing it, I don't think we'd like to broadcast it in
Right.
the open domain.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So whatever we are doing, we will keep doing it on their networks.
Right.
What they're doing here is projecting it here, and you'll find a lot of fake inputs coming in on photographs and videos coming in. Everybody believes, everybody knows it is fake, so there's nothing which they're achieving. Okay. So
Yeah.
you counter where it is essential. You ignore automatically implies that everyone knows it is fake.
So, what about the political will of our current setup? Have our political parties and political wisdom, apart from supporting the defense preparedness, are they also ready to push in one step further and say, we want to get back our Aksai Chin, we want to get Shaksgam Valley back as well, while China is pushing us on LSE?
See, those are issues in the long term. For you to be able to do it, you have to create, you have to get the opportunity. How will it come is a different ballgame, right? To instigate in the current environment, like I explained, no nation is willing to go in for major wars, mainly because of the existing environment, the nuclear and the rest of it, and the impact on your own economy, which will set you back by decades. So when you have to take a decision to go in for something, you have to look at the opportunity which is provided. You have to look at the environment which is existing. And if and when it is conducive, there's nobody who's going to stop you.
Okay.
But to straight away start out of the blue today and say, tomorrow I'm walking into Aksai Chin and I'm willing to escalate to whatever level, you are going to push not only the international environment against, but you're also going to push your own economies down. So you've got to take that decision in an environment which is conducive to you, which provides you an opportunity to do so.
Okay.
When it will come and how it will come, there are various options, but let's leave that aside. May come soon, it may come later, it'll all flow.
Okay. So one last question would be, now, if you had a crystal ball, how do you feel this will pan out on LSE? Will there be a battle of attrition in coming winter months and it will stretch out for very long? Or will the Chinese probably cave in sometime in next few months?
I would want to take it in a okay, let's be a little bit conservative. I would say you would push through a large part of the winter.
Okay.
Okay, before you take a call, because for the difference between the two forces is we have an 80-kilometer line between Leh and where our deployments are, and moving further on to DBO.
Okay.
Our troops have been holding there for decades. We are able to maintain them. We've increased the force level, so that means you've got to increase the quantum of supplies that we provide.
Right.
That's the only change that you need to do. Otherwise, we've been holding on to our areas. As far as they are concerned, they have moved into newer areas. How long are they willing to hold? Their chain line is 250 kilometers. How are you going to maintain? Right?
Right.
Now, at that time, will we take advantage? One doesn't know. Because you're looking at a resolution and you're willing to hold on, because you're in no hurry. None of these issues between India and China have been resolved in a short time.
Right.
Now, the question again rises here, which is that in Doklam, when they pulled out after 73 days, it was touted as an Indian victory.
Right.
Now, how many times are you going to tout it as an Indian victory and a Chinese defeat? How often is China going to accept that comment? So it has to come down to some sort of a solution, which will give them a reason that, okay, we've agreed on this time, but then you're not going to do this or whatever. Something is going to come through. Let's see how it comes.
Okay, fine, sir. I hope the imbroglio doesn't push through winter months. There is an election as well in October, and a lot of naysayers might say that some of the optics which are happening on LSE are due to that election, unless that gets postponed, especially Bihar. So let's keep our fingers crossed. It was great to have your perspectives today, and I hope to have you on another panel discussion someday.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you,
Take
sir.
care.
Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye.
Good evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.